Good morning.
Good morning.
It's so quiet. I'm Patrick DeRay, Chief of the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and I want to welcome everyone to the first Bar Advisory Group meeting of calendar year 2019. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday season, and we were just saying Happy New Year to each other, and it seems like an eternity ago that it was just the turn of the new year. But it was only just 2 weeks ago. I can't even believe how time has gone so fast, even in this new year. Had a very nice, relaxing holiday season, but we are already kicking into high gear and transitioning into a transition under the new governor. Governor Newsom has taken office as of about 10 days ago. And I had a mini panic attack on the way over here, wondering if our notice of our meeting had the correct governor's name on it. We were asked to switch over on the actual date he took office, which was January 7th, and that was the date our notices went out. So I called Zach on the way over here this morning in a panic, saying, please, I want to keep my job today. I hope we have the current governor on that notice, or I'm turning around and going back home. Anyway, we did. So thank you. We've got fairly light, it seemed, agenda to us, but then when we started looking at it, we came up with an idea that we had not done before, which was trying to determine some topics for consideration for the new year, and it's usually the last thing on all of my staff's minds, and maybe even some of the advisory group members' minds as we're closing out the year. Oh, got to get ready for the next advisory group meeting in January, the first calendar meeting of the year. We thought, wouldn't it be good to kind of do an overview of activities for the 2018 calendar year, and then look at goals coming up ahead for the 2019 year, and obviously beyond. And that was a nice idea that was brought to my attention by Deputy Chief Clay Leak. So we are going to test it out and see how it goes this year, and maybe make that a recurring presentation going forward at the start of each new calendar year. Kind of a look back and a look forward. So you'll see the program reviews for the first time ever on our agenda. Anyway, without further ado, I think we should kick the meeting off officially. I want to let everyone know that this meeting is being webcast, and those who are not physically able to attend today due to other commitments or just too far away, logistically cannot make it, can always participate in all of our public meetings. We want to make sure that that's understood and highlight that fact. Question and answers can take place through, and comments regarding any agenda topic through an email address that's available for people listening in through the webcast. That's at barmeeting@dca.ca.gov. Again, that's barmeeting@dca.ca.gov. And our webcaster is Bryce, sitting there. He's waved his hand. Any questions relating to the webcast? Certainly, Bryce will relay them to me if they come through the email address there. Zach Richardson, my assistant, and in the front office at Bar, he will monitor and relay any of the questions to me so I can kind of fold them into the various points of the presentations to make sure that our webcast listeners are able to participate and ask their questions or make their comments. What else do we have? I think that's it. We do have a workshop that's going to be scheduled, or is scheduled, for this room at 2 o'clock. It's scheduled for 2 to 4 p.m. or until the close of business, whatever happens. We're probably not going to go longer than an hour, but we always schedule the room for a couple, just to be on the safe side. That workshop is going to be dedicated to a regulatory proposal looking at changes to our repair assistance program. That's the program that helps those within certain income levels with smog check repairs. And we're looking at some changes to that program to increase the maximum amount that the state pays towards that program, and some other eligibility related criteria that we want to update with these regulations. So let's turn it over to introductions, and we'll start on my far right. Vince.
Good morning. I'm Vince Gregory, AAA Northern California.
Good morning, Elisa Reinhart with the California New Car Dealers Association.
Jack Moladonna for representing the California Auto Body Association.
David Kusa, Automotive Service Council of California.
Lou Anapolsky, California Midas Dealers Association.
Patrick DeRay, Chief of the Bureau of Automotive Repair.
Christy Babb, Automotive Oil Change Association.
John Gallo, California Automotive Business Coalition.
Nikki Ayers, Independent Automotive Professionals Association.
Jeff Tax, Automotive Maintenance and Repair Association.
George Ritz, California Automotive Teachers.
Ruben Parra with California Automotive Teachers.
Great. Thank you for the introductions. I also want to introduce the executive leadership at BAR. Doug Bellotti, Assistant Chief. Deputy Chief Clay Leake for the engineering and research branch, and also the technical services branches of BAR. Shelley Whitaker, Deputy Chief for all things admin. That's the Consumer Assistance Program, licensing, our personnel, contracts, business services, facilities management, and the list goes on. Thank you. Any others? And a whole host of BAR employees that who will probably come up at various points during the meeting. All right, welcome everyone. Let's kick this meeting off with our first presentation, which is always starts off with the DCA news and updates. And we do not have one of our executive office leaders from the department here today, other than a letter that was provided to me to read into the well, I guess for the record. So I'll do that as the presentation from the department on updating everyone on the current happenings here at the department. It begins, and it's dated today. Mr. DeRay, thank you for this opportunity to submit a written update from the Department of Consumer Affairs, DCA, to the Bureau of Automotive Repair. Below is a list of department news, activities, and important recent events. Highlights from 2018. This past year, we convened 9 licensing and enforcement workgroup meetings, 3 substance abuse coordination committee meetings, 4 directors' quarterly meetings, and 2 directors' board member and advisory committee leadership teleconferences. These activities not only brought us together to promote open dialogue among the department's boards and bureaus, but also promoted collaboration to further our mission in protecting California's consumers. The DCA annual report is the next heading. DCA's 2018 annual report is now available online. In fact, I would encourage anyone who's interested in reading that, and it has some information about the Bureau of Automotive Repair, to go visit the department's website. The report contains statistical and financial record of the work that the department and its boards and bureaus have achieved over the last year. When you have a moment, I invite you to go to the DCA website and peruse the document. Transition and Governor's Budget, that's the next major heading. As you all know, Monday, January 7th marked a new era for our state as Governor Newsom was sworn in as the 40th Governor of California. We at DCA are honored and excited to be a part of this new team. Our department is looking forward to doing all that we can to further the Governor's vision. The department has met with the transition team and many new and some familiar faces that have been appointed to new positions within the Governor's office. As for our current appointees, there is nothing you need to do other than continuing the service and great work you all have been doing on this Bureau. We intend to not miss a beat with the new team the Governor has assembled, and we will be in touch with them regarding appointment vacancies and pending reappointments in the near future. The next major heading is budget. On January 10th, the governor released his budget, outlining his fiscal priorities for the state. Based on the driving idea of California for all, the governor's budget proposes to pay down debts and pension obligations, continues to build up robust budget reserves while making significant investments in housing, childcare, health care, prescription drugs, preschool, and higher education. On the day the budget was released, we held a teleconference with board leadership, executive officers, and bureau chiefs to discuss the governor's 2019-2020 proposed budget and to review proposals within the budget specific to the department. Our fiscal operations team will follow up with each program in the coming weeks to discuss individual budgets in greater detail. The next major heading, and last one, is DCA support, AB 2138. Because AB 2138 affects nearly every board and bureau, the department has taken steps to support our programs to achieve a successful implementation. DCA provided programs with a draft timeline to stay on track for a July 2020 implementation date. Important to note that, to stay on track, action will be required by all programs by May 2019. DCA Legal's preliminary assessment is that AB 2138 might take approximately 50 regulations packages to implement. The Legal Affairs Division is developing model regulations to share with programs to create uniformity. Where feasible, DCA will take the lead on collecting data for the reporting requirements and complete one report to the legislature. Please let us know if the department can be of service to your bureau. If you have any questions, feel free to contact Christopher Castrillo at dca.ca.gov. All the best, Christopher Castrillo, Deputy Director, Board and Bureau Services, Department of Consumer Affairs. All right, thank you. We'll make sure this letter gets posted with the other presentations from the meeting today. For those who aren't familiar, there wasn't a lot of detail or explanation about AB 2138, although I think we did have a presentation about it last year at one of our meetings, I believe at the last meeting, in fact, in October. AB 2138, chaptered last year. Off the top of my head, I'm going to just kind of wing it here. It had some issues relating to licensure and some rehabilitation potential for those who had been previously, I think, disciplined or faced criminal activity, and looking at denials of licenses related that were due to substantially related crimes and such. So more details and more information will be forthcoming as it implies or is stated in this update. Each of the boards and bureaus will need to update its regulations with respect to licensure and the impact of this legislation. I know for the Bureau of Automotive Repair, we are already working on regulations to update our applications for licensure, not only your registration as an automotive repair dealer, but also your licenses for smog check station, lamp and brake adjusting stations, as well as the personal licenses that go along with each of those programs. So we'll be looking to incorporate the requirements of this legislation into those licensing application updates. We were already working on some things due to some legislation that was chaptered a couple of years ago that we're already implementing, but isn't as spelled out as we would like, relating to military licenses from veterans and spouses of military veterans and those kinds of things. So we were already working on some updates to our applications, and we'll incorporate, as I say, the requirements of AB 2138 into those changes. All right, we'll move on to our next presenters. Any questions, first of all, any questions or comments about the letter that I've read? Anything on the webcast as well? I'll pass around the letter for those here on the dais to be able to read while we're going through the meeting today. And we'll make sure it's posted to the website. All right. Our next presentation, Legislation and Regulations Update, Brian Clark and Holly O'Connor from the Bar Executive Office. Welcome. You can pass this around. Thanks. Hello. Good morning. Who's going to start?
I am.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, Holly. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Holly O'Connor, and I will be providing the legislation and regulations update today. Beginning with legislation, I will be providing a brief overview of pending bills in the legislature that may be of interest to the industry. And on the regulatory side, I will be providing an update on BAR's pending regulatory packages. Beginning with legislation, there are 4 bills I will be reviewing and start with AB 1824. This was a budget trailer bill signed by the governor and chaptered, which became effective on January 1st, 2019.
Holly?
Yes.
Just pause. Okay, we weren't keeping up with you here on the slides. Okay, thank you. I think there's a clicker there. Great, thank you. And there usually is a screen that comes down, but I think they.
Okay, so this was a budget trailer bill signed by the governor and chaptered, which became effective January 1st, 2019. This amends Vehicle Code Section 40610 to allow law enforcement to take other appropriate enforcement action in lieu of a notice to correct or a fix-it ticket for violations of Vehicle Code Sections 27150 and 27151. Violations of these sections now may result in fines. BAR does not enforce AB 1824. However, BAR administers the smog check referee program that may be utilized to inspect a vehicle that has been cited by law enforcement authorities for modified emission controls or excessive exhaust noise. Exhaust noise testing at referee centers is performed in compliance with SAE Standard J1492. The California Vehicle Code details the criteria for citation, which is administered by the CHP, and any questions regarding enforcement of this law should be directed to CHP and/or local law enforcement agencies.
Can I just jump in here real quickly? Last year, we did our best to update everyone at the October advisory group meeting on all the legislation and status of all legislation that was chaptered, as well as legislation that had been introduced and then fell by the wayside, died in committee, so to speak, or made its way to the governor's desk and was vetoed. This bill was off everyone's radar. In fact, we did not learn about it until after the new year when we got our first call. And so we've been kind of scrambling ever since to kind of learn more about it. It wasn't an obvious, AB 1824 was a budget trailer bill. I think it was chaptered in July. It had some primarily dealing with elections law issues, I believe, and a very small component of it that included this provision and some involvement of the Bureau of Automotive Repair and our program. It's kind of caught us off guard. We're kind of working with the stakeholders, SEMA and others, to understand more about it. Obviously, CHP and local law enforcement are going to be the primary implementers of this. We do have a referee program that's been around for years that has always been an outlet for individuals who've been in receipt of a correctable violation or fix-it ticket due to excessive noise from the muffler. It now looks like this legislation potentially does not give any option for correcting that violation. It's just going to be a fine. We haven't seen how it's been implemented yet. We're still only a couple of weeks into the new year, but we'll continue to monitor and keep everyone apprised of some of the results or the implementation of this new law. But I wanted to make sure that everybody had knew about it, and that's why we included it in and kind of worked it into this presentation. Was supposed to be just about new bills that have been introduced in the new session with the new legislature, but we had missed this one, so I wanted to come back and make sure that everybody was aware of it.
All right, the next one is AB 142, lead acid batteries. This increases the manufacturer fee on lead acid batteries from $1 to $2 and makes the collection of the fee permanent. It also permits the payment of the required fees by a battery manufacturer on behalf of an importer. Currently, there is no hearing scheduled. AB 210, smog check exemption, would exempt all motor vehicles, including diesel-powered vehicles manufactured prior to the 1983 model year from the smog check program. Currently, vehicles manufactured prior to the 1976 model year are exempt. There's also no hearing scheduled for AB 210 at this point. SB 59, automated vehicle technology, would establish state policy relating to automated vehicles to ensure these vehicles support the state's efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and encourage efficient land use. This bill requires the Office of Planning and Research in the Governor's Office, in coordination with the State Air Resources Board, to convene an automated vehicle interagency working group to guide policy development for automated vehicle technology. There's also no hearing currently scheduled for this bill. And that's it for legislation. We'll move to pending bar regulations.
Can we pause just a moment to see if there's any questions or any comments about the legislation? Because I know that there's one bill that was brought to my attention by the California Automotive Business Coalition within the last day or two, AB 161. I knew that was, you were going to jump on that, so I wanted to pause here. Assemblymember Ting, I believe it is, and if someone could at least make sure our legislative folks have it on their radar so we can give an update and keep track of it and continue to monitor it at future meetings.
That's exactly what I was going to cover. We are currently monitoring AB 161 from Ting because it would convert all receipts to electronic, and given the new regulations for electronic documentation and authorization, it definitely ties in with all the work that we did on that. So I think it would be in our interest to have the BAR take a look at that and then give us further report and feedback on BAR and DCA's position on that.
Yes, we can absolutely do that, include it.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I just wanted to follow up. Jack Muladana, Pat, I wanted to follow up on the bill, the exhaust, the noise bill, because I want to understand it a little better because of questions, and I know you guys are reviewing it now and it's new. So as I understand it, a prior law was that if there was excessive noise, that a consumer could get pulled over and they get a fix-it ticket. And they can go, I guess they can then take it to a referee, right, for BAR referee, and get a exemption certificate. Is that was the prior law?
You could get a certificate of compliance. But the test was somewhat limited, and I'll explain that, but go ahead.
Okay. And so now this law the new law now, what it does essentially is that now when someone gets pulled over, like CHP pulls a consumer over and gives them a ticket, it's really a fine. There's no fix-it-ability. Is that the way you understand the law?
That's our understanding of it, but we're still looking to meet with the various internal to government stakeholders, as well as some of our external stakeholders like SEMA and such.
Okay. And so as I understand it, it definitely applies to automobiles, vehicles. There was an issue whether it applies to motorcycles. That's a question that I want to just throw out. Do we know that for sure, or is that still open?
We do not know that for sure, but it is our current assumption and understanding that it is passenger vehicles, not motorcycles, that are affected or impacted by this bill.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to clarify, have an understanding of that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I will, just to share with you all, the limitation with respect to the referee inspection was a certain Society of Automotive Engineers, or SAE inspection procedure test standard, I don't remember it off the top of my head, that is called out for in statute, which is a static test, both at idle and 2,500 RPMs. It's not a dynamic test that puts the vehicle in motion. So there are some, and the limit, the threshold is 95 decibels, which is loud. But we do not, and when we are testing these vehicles, we do not put the vehicle in motion or anything like that. So they will get a certificate, or they have been getting a certificate up until the enactment and effectiveness of this bill on January 1st of this year. They've been getting a test at the referee that just is fairly limited at those two, in those two static states at idle and 2,500 RPMs. So, and that will be one of the challenges, is looking at if there's still going to be an interest in using the referee program to help, not necessarily clear the citation because it's a monetary citation, but at least help someone understand whether the vehicle's in compliance or not, so they could challenge it in court potentially. There are some limitations, as I have stated, with our test. But there are other avenues and other entities that perform a more thorough testing of decibels, of the vehicle's muffler noise. Questions to my left?
Just one more bill that was chaptered last year, which was AB 375, and it has to do with Privacy Act, and it has to do with systems gathering consumer information and the risk of that information being compromised at any point in time. And given the repair shops gather all that information in their point of sale systems, we would think that it would be of interest to the VAR to take a look at that and to be engaged and participate in the 4 meetings that are being held to develop the public policy on this particular issue, given all the data that we gather on the consumers that come into the repair shops.
What was that bill number?
That's AB 375, and there's currently 4 meetings scheduled throughout California, regionally, to set public policy on these issues. And just by way of background, what it has to do with is there's a lot of risk to consumers today with their private information being compromised, either by systems being hacked or through ransomware and all kinds of other methods to get consumer information and then sell that information and so on and so forth. And so the bill passed last year, again, that's AB 375, and now we're participating in some of the workshops that are being held to determine what the public policy is because of the risk for liability to businesses if this information gets compromised.
Thank you very much. That's one we'll take a look at. It. That was chaptered, though, last year, it sounds
Correct.
like. Okay. Yes, Mr. Kusa.
Thank you, Dave Kusa, ASCCA. So 2 questions. On the AB 1824, the exhaust noise, no vehicle codes were changed, just changing it from, as I understand it, it's just changing from a fix-it ticket to a citation. Is that, am I incorrect in that? Do we know?
Yeah, I think that is in the vehicle
Yeah,
code.
but I mean, nothing changed in the code other
no,
than...
the law still, with respect to being in compliance with Vehicle Code Section 27156 and the other, I think there's a couple other sections
okay.
that are cited. No, yeah, you still had to be
Right, but they did
road
the-
legal.
Right,
Yeah.
the codes cited here aren't new. These are all
No,
existing code.
Existing
That's
code.
what I thought. There was some internal discussion about that. AB 210, do we have available statistics of vehicles prior to 83 that fail? I'm sorry, the number of vehicles prior to 83 that get tested, and then the number of those that fail? And if not readily available, where would I find it?
We can get that information
Thank you.
and supply that to everyone. Yeah. Good question. Others? Mr. Parra?
Yes, also with the AB 210, how can we be put on the radar or, find the next steps in this act, because it's a big deal to a lot of stakeholders in California about excluding every vehicle prior to 82. That's quite a bit of vehicles in some areas. What are the next steps to this?
Well, presumably a hearing will be scheduled before the legislative committees, and that'll be an opportunity for all the stakeholders to weigh in support or opposition or neutral, whatever position they would like to take on that. We can keep people of this advisory group apprised of that.
Okay.
We'll continue to do our quarterly updates at this forum. But yeah, and the various associations that you are all that you belong to and are all interconnected to should be well on top of that information and be able to distribute that. But we'll do our best to alert everybody on the advisory group of upcoming stakeholder involvement opportunities, such as hearings.
Okay, thank you.
If I may on that also, the California Legislature maintains a website. That's where we pull our information from. If you go on there, there's a way that you can, it's like a tracking service. So when bills go to committee, when amendments are made, it'll provide you with, I believe it's email alerts that will be sent to you so you can track when the bill moves or when action is taken on the bill.
Well, that's a good point, Brian. Thank you very much. That website is on the second slide. Can you go back to it? There it is at the very bottom there, www.leginfo.legislature.ca.gov. And it sounds like you can subscribe to getting updates?
Yes, there's a section where you can obtain updates. I believe it's no cost.
I forgot about that. Thank you for pointing that out. All right. Any other questions? Yes, Elisa.
Hi, this isn't so much of a question, just a comment. AB 1824, you were far from the only ones, I think, who missed this bill. We missed it as well, and everyone we've talked to missed it as well. We only were made aware of it last week when a dealer called with an upset customer who'd had a vehicle modification done and then was stopped and got a $1,000 ticket. And I guess had been used to kind of receiving fix-it tickets. So just wanted to let you know that you weren't the only ones.
Thank you for I don't know, giving us some cover there. Appreciate it. I think a word to the wise, it's pay attention to those budget trailer bills because there can be some very interesting things that are dropped into them. And, we'll continue to do that each summer as we look at the budget bill, just to look at what might be contained in it, because you never know, there might be something that impacts our programs. So it's a good lesson for us. So thank you for pointing that out. Other questions, comments? Real quickly, anything on the webcast? No, via the webcast? Is anyone listening? Yes, come forward, please. Introduce yourself. Come to the mic. It's easier for everybody to hear you as well as the webcast to pick up the voice.
Bob Dubo. I'm a smog service provider. A little bit alarming to see AB 210 up there right on the heels of AB 1274 being implemented. So just wanted to hear what the basic argument of the bill is. What's the beneficial effect?
Well, I can't speak for the legislature on this, so I'm not exactly sure. I think for the most part, it's probably coming from the car enthusiasts and the collector cars, but I don't want to pinpoint them as the sponsors of the legislation. I would have to do some more research or analysis of it, but not to my knowledge, no. And I haven't had any opportunity to speak with the author's office or any of the potential sponsors of the bill. I'm not even exactly sure who the sponsors, as I say, are, but usually when I've seen legislation or we've seen legislation of this order, it's usually from the car enthusiasts out there, I think, concerned about vehicles passing and availability of parts and things like that to bring their vehicles into compliance. That's usually what it is. On the older vehicles end, there used to be a 30-year rolling exemption on the older side. So each passing year, a new car would drop off the inspection rolls, but that was repealed some years back. So, yeah, I don't know. That's my guess.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Other comments? questions. Sorry for the interruption, but you would get too far down before all of these comments regarding the legislative bills that are out there. So I thought it was a good time to pause. Okay, we'll move into the regulations.
Okay. The first regulatory proposal that I'm going to discuss is the STAR program cleanup. It has three purposes. The first is to delete 8 outdated Gold Shield program provisions. The second is to amend STAR eligibility criteria. And the third is to revise the STAR suspension process to be consistent with statute. The rulemaking package was submitted to the Department of Consumer Affairs Legal, and BAR is currently revising the initial statement of reasons based on DCA's legal review. Once DCA's formal review is complete, BAR will file with the Office of Administrative Law to begin the 45-day public comment period. The next one, training provider requirements. The purpose of this is to make requirements for certification of smog check training providers consistent with current licensing requirements, to authorize training for compliance with laws and regulations, and to make conforming changes to disciplinary guidelines. This rulemaking package was submitted to DCA, and BAR is currently revising the initial statement of reasons based on DCA's legal review. And once DCA's formal review is complete, BAR will file with the Office of Administrative Law to begin the 45-day public comment period. The repair assistance regulatory package purpose is to increase smog check repair assistance participation by providing higher repair contributions based on vehicle model year, reducing high pre-repair diagnostic fees for low-income vehicle owners, and to remove unnecessary eligibility restrictions pertaining to vehicle registration. There is a workshop this afternoon, and once that is complete, BAR will review the comments and input from the workshop and prepare the notice filing for submission to DCA Legal for an informal review. The brake and lamp stations and adjusters. The purpose of this package is to revise the ID numbers for station and adjuster licensing applications, to revise the license renewal and equipment requirements, and to revise handbooks providing procedures related to the inspection of brake and lamp systems and issuance of brake and lamp certificates, and also to revise brake and lamp certificate of adjustment and compliance. Its purpose is also to eliminate the gross vehicle weight rating restriction of vehicles to be inspected and certified by Class C stations. This rulemaking package was submitted to Department of Consumer Affairs, and we are currently revising this rulemaking package based on DCA's preliminary review. Once BAR completes revising this package, we will submit it to DCA for the formal review and then file with the Office of Administrative Law to begin the 45-day public comment period. The ARD oil change requirements, purpose is to require ARDs to adhere to the maintenance schedule published by the vehicle manufacturer, industry accepted and nationally distributed automotive service specification provider, or Cal Recycle, when making a recommendation to the consumer, and to require ARDs when completing an oil change to include on the invoice the statement, "Your vehicle's manufacturer publishes oil change intervals and the conditions and factors that influence those intervals in the owner's manual." The public hearing was held at BAR, and the public comment period ended April 23rd of last year. And we are continuing to monitor this regulatory package with the implementation of AB 3141.
I just interrupt real quickly. This regulation was kind of modeled after, I don't remember the bill number, AB 770, SB 778 from a couple of years ago that I believe made it to the governor's desk and was vetoed. And we said we would take a look at it through a possible regulatory change as opposed to a statutory one. At the hearing, it became very clear to us that there was going to be a difficult time building consensus on this package. So we kind of pulled back with the chaptering of AB 3141, which repealed the exemption for all minor services, including oil changes, and looking at the impact and implementation of that new law before we proceed. Thank you.
Exempt services, we are also revising regulations for consistency with AB 3141. This was proposed exempting roadside and other services from the definition of repair of motor vehicles. However, we did withdraw this from DCA formal review with the passage of AB 3141, which deleted the exceptions and excluded roadside services as defined. And that is it for the regulatory proposals. Any questions?
Anything on the webcast? Bryce, are you monitoring that, or is it just Zach? Has Zach disappeared? Oh. Remotely. Any comments from the audience? Don't leave just yet. That's it? I wanted to take this opportunity to give everyone a quick announcement here. We are losing our esteemed colleague here in regulations development, our coordinator, partners with Holly on this. Brian Clark is leaving the Bureau for, it sounds like a really an amazing job, and I'll let him describe it, but he'll be a hearing officer with the Department of Industrial Relations, and he can tell you about the types of cases that he'll be hearing, but his last day is next week, I think the 22nd. And we appreciate all of your work over these last couple of years. He's an amazing writer and has learned a lot and given a lot to this job in the last couple of years, really helped us champion and get through to completion the electronic documents and authorization regulations, the mobile ARD regulations from the last couple of years. A lot of work went into those two packages, and bringing them through to completion and crossing the finish line. We couldn't have done that without your excellent work, and your legal background and skills are going to be missed. Anyway, could you maybe elaborate a little bit on what I said, just and let us know, and everybody on the advisory group, what you're moving on to?
Oh, thanks, Pat. I appreciate the kind words. It was a difficult decision to make. I greatly enjoyed my time working at BAR and working with the executive staff and the program managers and staff also. I'm moving on, like Pat said, to a position with the Department of Industrial Relations. I'll be working as a hearing officer, splitting my time between Stockton and Sacramento, working on wage disputes. So I'll be hearing, taking testimony, and making decisions and issuing the written decisions on those disputes. Hopefully no one here will have anything that would require that. But you know, if you see me around, or if you have any questions, or on that or any other issues, feel free to reach out to me. I'm still within the state system. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. All right, any other comments, questions, concerns? All right, thank you both. And we'll be looking to fill Brian's position. I think we're probably already moving on that package to get you some help. We obviously can't do this with just one individual. There's too many bills and regulations to keep on top of, and certainly we'll need, and we've come to rely on having two people in this role. So anyway, thank you very much. All right, our next presenters on the California Vehicle Inspection System Transition Project to give us an update on CalVista, our clay leak, BAR's Deputy Chief, as well as Eric Schwartz, who represents the Database and Communication System Contractor SGS Testcom. Thank you both. Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you, Pat, for the introduction. My name is Clay Leake, Deputy Chief with the Bureau of Automotive Repair, here to give you a quick update on the Cal Vista project. So first, just a quick reminder in terms of scope, high-level summary. First and foremost was to negotiate ownership of the system, refresh the system to a state-owned data center, and in parallel with those activities, publish an RFP to obtain ongoing maintenance and operations services in support of the California Vehicle Inspection System. In terms of status, again, final bids were received on February 12th of 2018, and the review of those bids is still in progress. Quick update on project dependencies, the largest of which was the transition of the Bar 97 analyzers from dial-up to internet. As of January 6, 2019, 4,114 Bar 97 analyzers had been cut over to IP, which was actually a few more than we anticipated. 500 to 600 star stations chose not to upgrade their Bar 97 to an internet-capable model. And as always, equipment certification information is available on our BAR website. Worldwide Environmental Products and Opus are both approved for statewide use. No updates to the timeline from the last bag presentation in October. We continue to march towards a 4/1/2019 date to be completely transitioned to the new system over at OTEC, the State Data Center, and still shooting for a 4/1 date to award our RFP. And that's it for me. With that, I will hand it over to Eric Schwartz, who'll give you a little bit more detail on some of the refresh activities.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'll try to make it as quick as Clay's presentation. So for Cal Vista, we have actually had a lot of progress since we were here in front of you last meeting at the end of last year. We've completed the multiple stages of UAT, which is 4 through 6, and what those stages basically did was validate that in the event when we start cut over the actual production environment that we could fail back in an emergency or if there was some major failure. So that was more of a validation of our processes and procedures for being able to do that. And all that testing completed successfully. In addition, the production stage 1, which is basically testing out the actual production environment in an isolated scenario, was completed by both SGS and BAR, and that completed successfully as well. Then the disaster recovery environment, which is located down in our San Diego data center, was also testing actually has started for that, and the Oracle Exadata, which is the database storage unit down there, was certified by Oracle, and that's all up and functioning. We also had all connectivity established with our disaster recovery environment, and actually as of just last week as well, that everything was set, and so now we have full connectivity between CDTRC, which is the state-owned data center, and the San Diego Disaster Recovery Data Center. In terms of activities that are in progress at this point, the disaster recovery environment is currently undergoing testing, QA testing, which is quality assurance testing, ensuring that everything is functional in that environment. We are on track to finish that actually within the next week or so here, and then be able to turn that over to BAR to begin their QA testing of there. Preparation work is underway for the to production stage 2 environment, and that's where we begin to sync up the actual CDTRC with the legacy environments and begin all of our data replication across there. That is all preparation work in the event of beginning our cutover that's going to be coming up here within the next month. We are finalizing and conducting reviews on the production cutover. SGS is sitting down with BAR to review the actual cutover plans, the schedule, and all the steps to there so that everyone's in sync when that cutover occurs. And also we have a third-party audit that is in progress at this time, and that is a security audit that's looking at all the systems to ensure that they meet all the current security standards in place that have been requested by the state. We've also been conducting a lot of knowledge transfers between SGS and BAR, and we actually had a very good what we call collaboration meetings with the BAR staff, and it's when we get the technical staff together to talk about various topics, both of the transition, how the systems work, the design of the systems, and all the processes and procedures around them. And those meetings have been ongoing for the past 12 to 14 months and will be ongoing through the rest of this year. From a next steps perspective, we actually within the next month will be completing our production stage 2, 3, and 4, which is the connection with the legacy environment, the moving of the databases, and the actual cutover of all smog testing traffic from the legacy to the new environment. And at that point, when that's all complete, we will be live in the new environment. In addition, we'll be completing the QA testing of the disaster recovery and bringing that online as well, and conducting a disaster recovery test to ensure that that environment's successfully able to function on its own if it were needed. And with that, moving on to the milestones here. As I mentioned, some of the previous milestones that we have completed here, the biggest one that was added was the production stage 1 that was turned over to BAR on October 30th and then completed at testing actually by the end of last year. From upcoming milestones that we have the production stage 2, 3, and 4, as I mentioned, the disaster recovery, stabilization, and then as well completing the project. And at this point, all those activities are on track. The one I'll note here is production stage 2 is actually targeted to start on January 15th. Due to some additional testing that we did, performance testing on the databases, that actually has been pushed to the end of this month, but it will not impact any of the other dates that are coming up at this point. We are still on track to meet all of those and complete on schedule. With that, that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to play this, kind of falls into your area of your presentation, I should say, your half of the presentation. On slide 7, I think I know the answer to it, but and I think you've reported it at prior advisory group meetings, but I think it bears repeating. These bids were submitted for the RFP last February. I think it says February 12th. They're good for 1 year. Obviously, the award is looking beyond that 1 year time frame. What happens, or they do not expire necessarily? Could you give us an update on that, the pricing and everything that's associated with those bids?
Sure. So yes, as of right now, those bids are good through the middle of February. There are several options. One alternative is that the state can ask that those bids be extended. So that's certainly one potential option. Other options would be to kind of start all over, which is not an option I'm super excited about personally, but those are kind of the two options that are on the table.
And when do we make that decision? I mean, not trying to box you into, pin you into a corner or anything like that, but when, roughly speaking, I mean, we obviously have to make that before February 12th.
Yes, we need to make that decision before February, middle of February.
Is that something that's announced to all the vendors then?
That is something that will be shared with all the vendors.
Okay.
And possibly already has been.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. I want to make sure that was out there publicly. If it hasn't been already, I'm pretty sure you've said it before, but I want to make sure that that was out there again.
Absolutely appreciate that. The other quick update I wanted to provide was that I know we gave this update in October as well, but on December 1st of 2018, Amendment 9 officially became effective, which actually did reduce the cost per test from 1.329 back down to $1.08, which was where it was prior to the CalVista project being initiated. So I think that's a really positive thing that we were really glad to be able to do, both us and SGS. So
thank you for that reminder as well. I had one other comment, and it might involve some assistance from our enforcement management. I'll find the slide. Hold on. Slide 5, under Clay, your presentation. Star stations who did not update with the new required Bar 97 equipment update. I think it says we found 500 to 600 star stations that do not have the equipment. My understanding is there's a little bit less than 100 who that don't even have Bar 97 equipment, which to me is unbelievable that somehow someone got into the STAR program that requires them to have both systems and is STAR certified. But we are working on that list, trying to whittle it down, trying to find out where they are. There have been various interesting pieces of information that have come through our follow-up with the 500 to 600 stations. Some of which, I'll just throw it out there, some of which borders on finger pointing, that the manufacturer is unable to supply the equipment, or we didn't know we had to get the equipment, or we just thought, we could be a bar OBD inspection system in the STAR program, which is not true. The requirements do require, because we are sending older and newer vehicles to these STAR certified stations, you need both systems to be able to market yourself or hold yourself as inspecting all these vehicles, these directed vehicles that the state sends you as a STAR station. So we'll be responding. We already are in the process of responding and following up with these stations and taking action. For those who do not plan to stay in the, or have or update that Bar 97 equipment, they'll not be able to be part of the STAR program. It's that simple. So we're kind of formulating a plan of attack, if you will, to kind of address these 500 to 600 stations that haven't updated their equipment, and some of whom never had the equipment in the first place, which is quite disturbing from where I sit.
Yeah, as you mentioned, a lot of this kind of falls on the enforcement side, so I may not have the most recent information. Our commitment from the October BAG meeting was to make sure we reached out to all these stations, obviously to make sure STAR stations that are legitimately attempting to get equipment and potentially not able to do so because the manufacturers have a small backlog, just making sure obviously those stations aren't penalized for not having internet-ready equipment when they're legitimately trying to obtain it. So I think that's where we're at, is trying to make sure the good fish get through the net, and those that are legitimately not looking to get a Bar 97 moving forward are addressed appropriately. Yeah.
And obviously, anyone who's not in the STAR program, you have a menu of one or both systems that you can use to address whatever clientele and types of vehicles you're looking to inspect. That flexibility has been in place for years now, since we rolled out the OBD inspection system for those who are not in the STAR program. Pick and choose which of the two systems or both that you want. Yes, Jack.
Jack Molodov, thank you for the presentation. Let me just follow up on that. So there are 4,114 BAR analyzers that were converted, IP. So are those all the smog, the STAR stations right now currently?
That's the total number.
Total number of
STAR and
stations.
non-STAR.
STAR and non-STAR.
Correct.
Okay, but all right. And those 500 to 600 STAR stations that this dialogue was going back and forth, you're saying that some have tried, in good faith to be able to get equipment but can't? Is
Yes,
that
correct?
okay? And then others are just operating for whatever reason as a STAR station when they never even had the proper equipment. So that would be, in my mind, maybe potentially fraud, right, or something not good.
You're holding yourself out as one who can inspect a vehicle on a Bar 97 machine and not even having a Bar 97 machine. That seems
Yeah, that doesn't seem right.
Fall into the false and misleading category from my standpoint. But yeah, we'll figure out how to address that with those. I believe it's about 80 stations that we've determined never even had the machine to begin with.
Yeah, that's a big number, 500 to 600 STAR stations. That's a little troubling. I do have another question regarding, maybe this is to Eric, because you were using terms like cutoff and environment and terms like that. So the data system from SGS to OTEC, the schedule date is April. Is that what I saw on the schedule date? The transfer to be
We'll have it completed by April. We're on target to start it on March 1st and have it fully completed by April 1st.
So that means that, okay, so how, that's just an estimate date now, or is that pretty, do you feel pretty comfortable it's going to be in April?
Very confident we'll be completed by April, yes.
All right. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
So just real quick on the 500 to 600, some of these stations may be legitimately choosing to not do Bar 97 testing moving forward and just have relinquish their STAR privileges. So I just wanted to clarify what that population is, and some of them, like I say, are just making a conscious business decision to not move forward with that STAR certification. Yeah.
Mr. Gallo.
John Gallo, California Automotive Business Coalition. When we look at the number of STAR stations, are we still, in the total population, are we still looking at around 1,000 STAR locations? Or are there more or less than that? Because when I'm looking at 500 and 600 stations, That's a high number if we're still looking at about a population of about
I think it's
11.
about 4,000.
I think there's substantially more than that.
Of our
Yeah.
7,500 roughly smog stations, about 4,000 are star certified. I don't know that. to
I see
be-
my chief of engineering shaking his head yes in the background, so
Yeah.
I think 4,000 is about the right.
Okay, so 4,000 is the number. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Mr. Parra.
Yes, Pat. Back a couple of meetings ago, we had, and this question might be for enforcement, but back a couple of meetings ago, we talked about a program that was going to take and seek out STAR programs that were not doing Bar 97 testing by checking to see how often they would, what do you call it? They would take and update their equipment, or they would calibrate their equipment. Have we had any numbers on that as to how that program is working or how it's been enforced? Because there's a big problem now with customers going to stations and the stations constantly saying they can't do the dyno testing because the machines are they're not working right now, and I've had several complaints from various people talk about they can't get a Bar 97 test, especially an ASM. Has there been any numbers or any data on that yet?
I'm looking in the room to see if someone from our auditing program is here. I know he's expected to give a presentation as part of the program reviews coming up, agenda item number 5. I don't see Mr. Lafferty in the room. If we have any data with respect to the auditing of the equipment and calibration requirements and things like that. Do we have any data from that off the top of our heads? Hello? Forward, Garrett. I'm sorry if you're going to answer it. I'm just, because we've got the webcast, I've got to do justice to it and have you come up. Sorry.
Yeah, the calibration requirements you were talking about, that's actually part of the STAR regulation package, and so that won't go into effect until those regulations are enacted.
Okay. Okay. One of the things I wanted to point out, if I can, I'm looking at your slide. This really, I think, becomes even more worthy of pointing out. Mr. Gallo left, but he asked, how many STAR stations are there? It's about 4,000. 500 to 600 apparently do not have the Bar 97 update. I'm trying to find the slide, sorry. Slide 5 again. Oh, you said you have 4,114 stations altogether, STAR and non-STAR, that updated as of January 6th. Well, if there's 4,000 STAR stations, there are not many non-STAR stations that are upgrading. So without having this requirement for STAR stations to have both systems, anyone with an older vehicle is going to be hard-pressed to find a station performing that inspection. It almost, I hate to say it, almost comes back to that legislation that's trying to cut off the inspections for the older vehicles. If there's no one to perform that inspection, what are we doing?
Yeah,
But, so that's why the equipment requirement is placed on the STAR stations, because, and I know many stations have asked us, why can't I just have the OBD inspection system? Yes, but not part of STAR, just because that we are sending older and newer vehicles that require testing on both of those platforms to those stations. Consumers are expecting to get an inspection on a Bar 97 if they visit a STAR station. So it's really interesting to me that only 4,114 stations have upgraded to the Bar 97, and most of those are STAR stations, but yeah, not many non-STAR stations, it sounds like. If you take away, my math is 500 to 600 are STAR without, we have 4,000 plus STAR stations. Yeah, not many non-STAR stations have upgraded.
Yeah, and certainly, we're aware there's STAR stations out there that are kind of playing a game, right? They want to get directed vehicles, but they don't want to do Bar 97 tests, right? So as Garrett mentioned, there's a regulation package in process that's going to help us address some of that, but we're certainly aware that some of that behavior exists. It's a relatively small number of stations, but they're out there.
They park it in the corner of the garage, right?
Sure. So I think, this 500 to 600, I'm glad there's some good discussion. I kind of anticipated definitely probably a follow-up at the next bag and potentially future bag meetings as we kind of drill into this 500 to 600 and get a little bit more data and are able to figure out. Unfortunately, there is a lot of work, reaching out to these stations and figuring out what's really going on and making sure we're not penalizing folks that are playing by the rules. So I think maybe a good potential topic for a future bag meeting.
So I know Garrett Torgerson, our engineering manager, addressed the STAR regulation package and building in a calibration component into the STAR program requirements. But I thought Mr. Parra was asking a question related to what kind of data do we have from the audits and inspections group with respect to our audits of the machines and looking at whether a calibration had been performed in the last X number of days or as required pursuant to our current law, whatever that is. I don't know what it is. And I would expect we would be able to provide some data relative to that question. Sure. And I thought that was your question.
That was my question. And also with regards to how many, ASM tests are they actually performing? Because if they're performing none, which some stations are, it can't be right. The numbers can't be right. If a station is performing, if they're not performing any ASM tests, which on 99 and older vehicles, again, there's a number of stations that are almost refusing to do those tests. And if they're not doing any of those tests, then they shouldn't maintain a STAR status either.
We've flirted with the idea of putting a minimum requirement for the course of the year for a STAR station as part of the STAR regulation packages. Like, I don't know, throwing it out there. It wouldn't be 10 inspections a year. It wouldn't be something too unreasonable, or even more than that. But I'm just throwing it out there. We have talked about that as a requirement potentially to be in STAR. You raise a good point, Mr. Parra. Thank you. Other questions and comments? Okay, thank you both. We'll see you in April, and good luck with the rollout. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm excited. All right. Now for our 2018-19 program reviews. I believe we put these in alphabetical order is what I was told, so it might jump around a little bit. And we have a couple of people, one individual who's out sick, so I'll introduce the substitutes for one of the presenters. But I think the way I'll just call each of you up as your portions occur. And it's audits. It is in alphabetical order. Audits and Roadsides Branch. Gary Goodwin, Program Representative Supervisor, come forward. I thought it was Michael doing this. I apologize, Gary. Come forward, please. Thank you. And each of our presenters was trying to keep to a 2-slide presentation, just in the interest of time, and trying to boil it down to make it as efficient and simple for everybody in the room to be able to follow it and everything. I think that was kind of a general rule, but a couple of them may have gone into more than a couple of slides, but that was our general rule and instructions to all the presenters here today. So welcome, Mr. Goodwin. Are you on? Are you live on the green button? Is it lit there? I couldn't hear you very well.
My name is Gary Goodwin. I am the supervisor for the fleets unit within the Audits and Roadsides branch. Michael Lafferty couldn't be here today. So the Audits and Roadsides branch consists of 3 distinct units: the roadside testing unit, the gas audit unit, and the fleets unit. For 2018, the roadside unit, who goes out and gathers the roadside testing data that's used in the smog check performance report and the US EPA reports, they tested collectively 13,795 vehicles for calendar year 2018. And for the first time, they are now gathering BAR 97 and OIS data on model years up to 2014. So the gas audit unit, which, as Pat had said, performs the gas audits and peripheral equipment inspections for smog check stations, performed 4,676 analyzer audits. That represents a 17% increase over 2017. These were done primarily in the enhanced program area. And they also incorporated the current Bar 97 specs and the IP conversion into their business processes. The fleets unit closed 421 non-compliance enforcement actions against publicly owned agencies for non-compliance with smog check laws. That represents a 97% compliance rate across the board. So for 2019, the roadside unit will continue to gather sufficient data from older vehicles to allow BAR engineering to evaluate smog check. As the fleet modernizes, we face the challenges that there are simply fewer of the older vehicles on the road to test. So we will continue to look for ways to meet the goals that we have to meet. We will also expand Bar 97 and OIS data gathering on the 2008 and 2014 model year vehicles. That information is used not only by BAR, but by Air Resources Board. Gas audit unit, we do believe that we now have the efficiencies and the resources in place to expand further into the basic and change of ownership areas. And we will continue to look for ways to improve the gas audit cycle time, or the time, the interval between visits to these smog check stations. The fleets unit is currently conducting a unit-wide process analysis. We are analyzing every business process within the unit. We hope to have that completed by the end of this quarter, at which point we will determine whether changes are necessary. And we believe that we can leverage technology. It's a very heavily data-driven unit, so we believe that we can leverage technology to gain additional efficiencies. And that is it for me.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? I had one. You'd already heard the discussion and the question about kind of the results from your gas audits as it relates to star stations and kind of your findings. I don't want to put you on the spot today, but I think coming back maybe in the April meeting, and we could have a more detailed discussion with a presentation of sorts of your gas audit finding results as it relates to star and non-star stations. I think that would be interesting for all of us, it seems to me, as well as an update on the 500 to 600 stations that haven't upgraded to the Bar 97. Hold on, let me just check on the advisory group members. Anybody? Questions? Comments? Yes, Mr. Rice.
Good morning, Bud Rice with Quality Tune-Up Shops. Two things. First one is, I'm a little surprised Lafferty's not here. Not nice to see you this morning, sir, but because this report's remarkable when you really think about it. I mean, the roadside checks had always been a quality control mechanism for how are the shops doing, and they're being double checked by roadside checks as to whether or not we're doing a good job or not. Well, in the end, if these numbers are correct, that's remarkable. I mean, if we had some people that he had to chase around a little bit, the 421 out of almost 14,000 roadside checks that are performed, your 97% compliance rate is, like I said, it's just remarkable.
So that's for fleets as opposed to the roadside unit. That's
Yeah,
for
so that's
fleet,
correct.
both government and what do we call them? Professional.
The permanent fleet registrants.
Yeah.
But this is specifically for the government or the publicly owned agencies. The fleets unit is charged with verifying smog check compliance for California exempt and federal vehicles operating in California.
So that wasn't the roadsides numbers.
Okay, but still, I mean, even to the extent that those vehicles are being checked to see how they're doing, I mean, it would be interesting now to go to the next step and see how public vehicles are matching up against that, to see what the delta is and why are they why is there a delta between the two? But for this report, I think that's unbelievable. I mean, so I just think that's fabulous. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Anything else before we move to our next portion of the program review? Anything on the webcast? All right, thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Pat.
Linda Jansen, Business Services and Contracts Management.
Good morning. My name is Linda Jansen. I'm the manager over BAR's administration branch. And we're a service organization. The services that we provide to other divisions within BAR and BAR employees is our personnel office. We have contracts where we purchase or a contract for goods and services, procurement for non-IT purchases. We have the warehouse and the mailroom, and we purchase fleet vehicles, and we manage BAR's facilities. So today, I mean, we had a lot of accomplishments for 2018, but the one that we were the most proud of relates to contracts and business services. There are small business, there we go, small business and disabled veteran business enterprise participation percentages that are set by the Department of General Services. Those goals were 25% for small business and 3% for disabled veteran business enterprises, and we exceeded those goals. Our small business was 43.41%, and our disabled veteran business enterprise achievement was 7.91%. And next week, we will actually be receiving the state agency recognition award for that particular achievement. Our goals for 2019, again, we are planning on, or our goal is to exceed those numbers for small business and disabled veteran business enterprises. We are have begun to update our current desk manuals and look for ways to streamline our processes. We wish to utilize emerging technologies such as e-faxing to eliminate paper waste, and we are in the process of digitizing our paper files to reduce storage costs.
It was one I forgot that I think we should mention, which is our zero emission vehicle mandate and what BAR is doing to kind of lead the way for the department.
The governor's mandate is by 2025, 50% of our fleet will be zero emission vehicles. And we are working towards that goal by purchasing all electric vehicles. And we just purchased our first hydrogen fuel vehicle. So we are intending to meet those goals and maybe exceed them on behalf of the Department of Consumer Affairs.
And the San Jose field office loves that hydrogen.
They
It has all the
do.
bells
They-
and whistles on it, apparently, but that hydrogen vehicle currently is being utilized by our San Jose field office. And we have a plan to purchase, what, another 8 this year, right?
Yes, yes. And that's it for the Anden branch.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Consumer Assistance, Denise Cunningham. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Get the right notes here, and I will be ready to proceed. Okay, good morning. I'm Denise Cunningham with the Consumer Assistance Program, and as you probably all know, the Consumer Assistance Program runs 3 programs. There's 2 vehicle retirement programs, both CAP's own vehicle retirement program and the Enhanced Fleet Modernization Program that we operate in cooperation with the Air Resources Board. We also run a repair assistance program. In 2018, we retired through both of our programs, both retirement programs. We retired over 50,000 vehicles. We repaired over 3,300 vehicles, and we'd reduced those programs together, reduced over 7,100 tons of vehicle emissions. Looking at our customer service, in the area of customer service, we processed over 150,000 applications. We handled over 140,000 consumer calls in regard with questions pertaining to the program. And our CAP technical line and our industry help desk handled about 20,000 calls from repair stations that were seeking information and seeking help to with issues primarily usually around smog check. We had a survey last March indicated that our vehicle retirement program has over a 94% satisfaction rate. And we have now achieved a 73% utilization rate of our online application process. And that is a great convenience for customers, and it also reduces costs for the Bureau immensely in processing these applications.
And I believe reduces the amount of deficient applications and errors.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. It does reduce errors. On the process improvement side, we've implemented several processes. First is the online application status check, which allows consumers to conveniently check the status of their applications for vehicle retirement and for repair assistance online, so they don't have to get on the phone and call us. That's been very successful. We completed over 1,300 dismantler audits and over 3,300 repair assistance or repair reviews for the various programs. We converted to electronic processing and storage for all of our repair assistance documents. And we also transitioned to electronic transmission of repair assistance invoices from the Consumer Assistance Program to DCA accounting. And we hope that that will shave some time off the, there's always a lag time for getting people getting paid, and we hope that shaves some time off of that. For next year, I'm going to get my notes up here. We are first and foremost hoping to update the RA regulations, repair assistance regulations, to provide additional assistance to low-income consumers, and we are having that workshop this afternoon. We are releasing an information for bid for the vehicle retirement dismantler contracts. Those contracts expire in June, or at the end of June, and we hope to award new contracts on July 1. We plan to convert all our vehicle retirement documents. We plan to convert to electronic processing and storage of all our vehicle retirement documents. We're also going to transition to electronic transmission of the VR invoices to between CAP and DCA. And we also plan to begin the process of converting all CAP application files to electronic storage. And I say begin because this is a rather large process. We have hundreds of thousands of applications that come in, And so the process of converting them, we anticipate will take a little bit of time. And lastly, we intend to assist the Air Resources Board and the local air districts on the retire and replace programs that they've been implementing throughout the state. And that finishes it for me.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay. Anything on the webcast? No? All right. I'll check in periodically. All right. Thank you very much, Denise. We'll see you this afternoon at the Repair Assistance Workshop. All right. Bill Thomas, Program Manager over the Enforcement Operations Branch. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. This was one of the more difficult assignments Pat gave us, especially in enforcement operations, because we kind of just do our job every day, process the cases, all the enforcement work product that comes up, process that through, and certainly it's an accomplishment. It's a large workload, but to identify special things to report to the group was a little tough. But we found a couple. We worked, as I presented at the last advisory group meeting, we worked with DCA's Office of Information Services to replace the web license lookup with the license search function. As I presented in the last meeting, that contains better drop-down menus, a little more functionality for the users, and a little better display of the information. Additionally, we also collaborated with DCA's Office of Legal Affairs, or Division of Legal Affairs Division, not sure what the exact title is, to designate 2 decisions as precedent. One of those to clarify the standard of evidence in technician cases and define whether or not that's a professional license or an occupational license, and the ALJ found it remains an occupational license even with license restructure. And the second precedent decision was to clarify that the rollout of the OIS testing was compliant with the government code in establishing regulations. It wasn't an underground regulation as had been argued at hearing. So those were 2 good decisions to get up on the web, and we will always look for more. Our goals this year are to work with the field operations side of the enforcement division to continue to identify efficiencies and move our cases through as quickly as possible through the administrative process to continue to protect consumers from bad actors. And the second goal will be to work with partner agencies to do the same thing. It would be the Office of Administrative Hearings and the Attorney General's office.
Thank you, Bill. I'm glad you mentioned the 2 decisions that we designated as precedent. I was asked at a meeting yesterday before for the board, the California Automotive Business Coalition Board, the status of these and why we had pursued them, and I think we came to pretty good discussion of that, but maybe it bears repeating for the larger audience here. These were kind of, in our minds, well-settled areas of law that continually were raised, in particular by opposing legal counsel. And in our, I don't know if it's fair to say, but it seemed like it was an attempt to confuse or distract the judges on these 2 areas that seemed to be fairly well settled. So we thought it was important to establish them as precedent. As I shared with the board members yesterday at Cal ABC, and I'm glad you mentioned the one. I couldn't remember the one on the licensing, and it had to do with the
standard of evidence.
Evidence.
Yes, burden of proof, if you will.
Burden of proof, excuse me. Yeah. And establishing it as is it a preponderance of evidence?
Yes.
Yeah, preponderance of evidence, and not a clear and convincing or beyond a reasonable doubt standard, which is more for beyond a reasonable doubt for criminal cases and things
Right.
like that. So, yes, happy you raised that. I left the board meeting yesterday kind of giving the impression that there was nothing on the horizon, but as things come up that we feel are, as you've kind of alluded to, are worthy of establishing as precedent, we'll give those consideration. But it is a lot of work to establish something as precedent. We had to go through extensive review with our department. We had to open them up for public hearing
Right.
and respond to any comments that we received at the public hearings, which were none or at the hearings that were held last year. But and that's something we have to maintain on our website for everybody to be able to track and follow and know what is expected as our presidential rulings. So we'll be maintaining that on our website and sending out annual notices that will be published in the notice of registry that the Office of Administrative Law publishes each year. So it is a lot of work, but in our minds, it was worth the effort to be able to let everybody know what our expectations in these two areas at least were.
Correct. There were a lot of tentacles to that, including one, the Attorney General's office must make the recommendation and concur with adopting it as precedent. And that's one step that we have to go through. And there were actually a couple of areas in one of those decisions where there was some discussion with the AG's office and they weren't included as precedent. So.
Lou was just reminding me of the three burdens of proof and the kind of the percentages that went with that.
Yeah, 50, 75, and 100.
Yeah.
Or 99.9.
So preponderance of evidence is for an occupational license. A professional license is kind of a clear and convincing burden of proof. And then the beyond of reasonable doubt is for criminal.
Correct.
Okay, and that's more like, yeah. What percentage are we putting on that? I don't know, but yeah.
99.9.
Yeah, okay, there you go. All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments relative to this portion of the presentation? Yes, Mr. Rice.
I'm not sure if I got this wrong, but wasn't on the precedent setting, wasn't there something also with the testing on the wrong platform? Wasn't there something?
That was the other decision. So there were two. The first one had to do with the burden of proof for discipline against an occupational license, a licensee of the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and then the second one had to do with the start date of the OIS testing and any other equipment updates that we might roll out at some point in the future.
The argument was presented that, as Pat said by common opposing counsel, was that because we didn't define in regs the exact date that we were going to begin OIS testing, it was therefore an improper regulatory action, if you will. However, that was vetted through OAL. It was followed, the regulatory process was followed exactly, and it was stated once we, it would be hard to, with all the beta testing that had to go on with that equipment to make sure it worked properly, it would be hard for the Bureau to identify an exact rollout date 2 years in advance.
And station readiness, for that matter.
Exactly.
I mean,
so
we could have dropped the program and rolled it out the day the regulations were adopted and took effect.
Right.
No one would have been ready. It would have been pointless for us to do that. So we always give 60 to 90 days lead time at least for the industry, and there was sufficient in the ALJ's estimation in hearing this argument and responding to it, that there was sufficient communication with the industry after the effectiveness of those regulations to make it really well known what the start date for the program or rollout of that program was.
Yes,
March 9th, 2015 is embedded in all of our heads.
Right.
It was out there for quite some time.
And the decision, that's why we selected that decision. The ALJ did an excellent job of detailing how the Bureau followed the regulatory process, and everything was correct.
So how does that play into other rollouts? Well, November 1 was the update for the Bar 97 machine. You've already seen 500 stations, 500, 600 star stations who aren't updated with that equipment. If this will be useful in responding potentially to an argument along those lines.
Exactly.
Yeah, so my reason for bringing it up is we had spoken about that yesterday. I was doing it for the benefit of the group this morning, that's what the leveling of the playing field was for. I will tell you that at one or two BAG meetings earlier, we had kind of thought, we had talked about testing on the wrong platform, and BAR was taking the position of it being more of a training exercise as opposed to being punitive in nature. That's what we were hearing at the couple of BAG meetings back. So we kind of went away thinking that was the approach BAR was going to take. And then when this president thing came down the track, we were going, wait a minute, I thought we'd already talked about this, but this is being used as a broader.
This is
We're so
Okay, good.
just right, so close.
This may not be in BAR's purview, but I'm a few weeks out of date. But last I had checked, because the regulations that are documented, if you go look them up, aren't up yet.
Right.
What is that? I mean, is that BAR's purview? Is that somebody else makes sure those get updated so they agree?
As soon as last week, we were making final adjustments to that draft. The one that's published on the web currently is not going to be the final version. It's been a really large task to get every single word of that thing just right. And we've been working very, very hard on it. And I think we're so close right now.
as well as adding the sample estimate,
Yeah.
work order,
Invoice.
and a new texting,
Yep.
sample texting of a revised estimate.
Yeah. I think you'll find the final product to be very, very helpful from an automotive repair dealer standpoint.
And so far it already is. So yeah, I think it's going to be great. But my second question though is, in each section on the handbook, the code, the regulation, the law is there. If you go look that up, the specific language, it's not updated, right? It doesn't agree. So who is responsible for making sure the language on the website that details all of the laws and codes is accurate? That's brought up to date.
We are responsible for that.
Okay.
And the final version will be 100% accurate.
Okay.
Those were some of the changes that we made just very recently in updating those final numbers.
Okay, cool.
Final
Great.
code sections, yeah. And but you're right though, the current version currently published, some of those code, specifically the paragraph sections are not correct. because
Yeah.
of the
Well,
regulation updates.
the verbiage doesn't agree yet, right? Because we were internally, as an association, or on my committee, we're looking at the draft, and somebody had brought up, I read this here and I read this here, and they're totally different.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, they haven't been updated yet, right?
Right.
So we're waiting. So don't worry about it yet. But
Right.
I just want to, if that's bar make, okay, so it's your guys. Okay, cool. Thank you.
We're working on it.
Thank you.
It's a daily task for us right now.
Real close, like you say. Anyone else? Questions, comments? Webcast, back up. I heard there was some technical difficulties. Got the thumbs up there. Good. All right. Anyone on the webcast? Any questions? No? Anyone from the audience? All right. Thanks, guys. You're good. Licensing. Vince Soma is out sick with the flu today. Poor Vince. I assume you're not listening at home. Licensing representatives Nick Sears and John Stanley. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Sears, this is John Stanley. As for what we have today, if you're looking at the first page here, there's a lot of numbers you're looking at here. I'll summarize this pretty quickly for you. The overall for 2018 solely, overall business, that's going to include your automotive repair dealer, your smog check test and repair stations, test-only stations, and repair-only stations, comes to a total of 5,002 applications that were received in 2018. Of those 5,002, 4,688 were issued. As for renewals, we have a total of 6,666 business-wise registrations or licenses that were renewed for 2018. When you're looking at the inspector and adjusters, We received a total of 5,083 applications, and of those, we had a total of 1,932 that were issued. The adjusters don't renew, they're always initials, but as for your renewals for inspectors and technicians, repair technicians, you had a total of 9,941 that renewed for 2018. Your next page here, you're looking at to date for licensing. Overall registrations business-wise is a total of 46,223. That includes, again, your automotive repair dealer, your smog check test and repair stations, test-only stations, repair-only stations, and brake and lamp stations as well. And to date for your smog check inspector, repair technicians, smog check repair technicians, and brake and lamp adjusters, the total is 26,719. And as for STAR certificates, we have a total of 4,453 for to date for licensing.
Thank you. I think it's important just to note that these are unique licenses, not necessarily unique individuals or unique entities.
Yes,
ARD
unique
may
licenses.
have
So-
a smog license, station license, a brake license, and a
Yeah,
lamp
one
license.
business can have a smog station, one of the three, and as well brake and lamp, all under one business, yes.
And the same with the individual
And with
licenses. You could be a
technicians.
smog check inspector, a smog check repair technician, a brake adjuster, and a lamp adjuster.
All with the same person,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And so with our 2018 accomplishments, our online license renewal is up and running, fully functional right now. We have begun accepting and registering applications for strictly mobile automotive repair dealers. And we have a special handling on all applications for veterans, active duty military, and eligible military dependents, as well as the victims of the California wildfires.
You could just give me an example. Like someone asked me, and I wasn't able to, I don't think, give a complete answer, but some of the things we did with respect to the victims of the wildfires. Was it just a prioritization?
Yeah, bump them to the head of the line so they can get back to business as usual.
And I think, if there were some delinquent registrations or licenses, we probably were a little more understanding
Lenient.
in those
Yeah.
circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, there weren't really any, letting them off the hook for anything, but we were understanding in their situation.
Yeah.
And took that into consideration when processing anything for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And looking ahead this year, we plan to modernize the licensing process and better utilization of technology when corresponding with the applicants, scanning and emailing deficiencies and what have you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let me see if there's any questions. Yes, Nikki. I looked left first. Yes.
I have a question about, I'm sorry, this is Nikki from the IAPA, about delinquent licenses. And what are you doing about people that are 2 and 3 years out that are still operating and have not renewed their license?
They're responsible for their registration. That's something that probably enforcement takes care of, or field offices. That's not something that licensing, we deal with processing the renewals when it comes through, but that is probably handled outside of licensing.
Yeah, I would think that there's some coordination going on between licensing and the enforcement branch or enforcement division to make sure that there's follow-up and taking adequate action or response to those delinquent registrations or licenses.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll be filing potentially, first of all, you start with the, what's going on. You want to bring them where you aren't renewed, and we'll have that discussion at the field office level. But just there might be even further action necessary if they continue not to keep their license updated, and that could be potentially an action filed through the ALJ's office, the Attorney General's office, Right, Bill? Yes. Mr. Ritz.
George Ritz with the California Automotive Teachers. Could you go back to the first slide? You know, if you look at the smog inspector, smog check repair technician, and brake and license adjuster, you get a lot of applications and not very many licenses issued. I don't know whether it's a discussion now or sometime in the future, Pat, that we talk about, you know, it's pretty dismal.
I think a lot of that has to do with what we've received for that application, because that application is on hold until we've received all the pertinent information to process. So it could be something that we may have currently that hasn't been approved because we don't have everything for that application to approve it.
Yeah, we'll have to dig further on that, George. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any others? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nick and John, appreciate you filling in for Vince today. Technical training. I saw Michelle walking up before I knew I had flipped the page, so I'm Technical Training Unit, Michelle Oberg, representing BAR.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Oberg. I'm the supervisor of BAR's Technical Training Unit. I'm going to cover some of our 2018 activity as well as what's coming up in 2019. Staff development is an important part of BAR's strategic goal area of organizational effectiveness, and the Technical Training Unit is the first stop for any BAR employee seeking training to improve their skills and abilities. Some of our 2018 accomplishments, my talented staff completely redeveloped and administered 3 of our core courses. This is our 32-hour program representative training, a 16-hour technical report writing course, and a 16-hour mediator techniques course. These, together with other courses such as court preparation and testimony skills, smog check update courses, resulted in training over 250 BAR staff throughout the state. We trained over 900 law enforcement personnel throughout the state in modified emission control systems to combat the illegal street racing and sideshow activity. The Technical Training Unit staff built from the ground up a comprehensive hands-on 36-hour structural damage analysis course designed specifically for BAR staff conducting collision repair investigations. This is a highly interactive course utilizing training aids including multiple vehicle clips mounted on rotisseries, modern automotive inspection technology, and includes information on advanced auto body design, materials, and technology. Our unit provided training opportunities through DCA and external training vendors. BAR staff attended over 1,400 courses from these entities. We worked with DCA's solid training to provide leadership, computer skills, soft skills courses, and more to BAR staff. We contracted with multiple vendors to provide similar training opportunities for BAR staff that work outside of the Sacramento area. We also contracted with a wide variety of automotive technology vendors to provide training in automotive and collision repair technology, totaling over 350 courses taken by BAR staff. We also provided flexible online automotive technology training to BAR staff, including AVI on demand and iCar online training. So some of our plans and activities coming up in 2019, we're going to continue our in-house course development and administration, including an updated laws and regulations course, the new smog check update course for license retention for BAR staff. We will provide additional court preparation and testimony skills and structural damage analysis courses. We will continue the training that's mandated by the bargaining unit memorandum of understanding for program representatives. We'll also be developing online training modules to complement and supplement our existing courses. We'll also be expanding our external training vendors, including WorldPack, which is a general automotive training vendor. We've also contracted with a forensic photographer who has developed a course exclusively and tailored for BAR enforcement staff to improve their forensic photography skills. Some other things we're doing is acquiring a learning management system through the Department of Consumer Affairs that will allow us to more efficiently streamline the training request authorization process, deliver, track, and run reports, administer training courses, and provide online educational courses and content. Lastly, we are facilitating a bar work group that examines the changing collision repair environment and the related laws and regulations. The goal of this work group is to determine how the collision repair environment impacts stakeholders and where this environment intersects with BAR's authority and responsibility. I'll entertain any questions or comments.
Questions, comments? Thank you, Michelle. Good stuff. I think our final presenter in this program reviews is Deputy Chief Clay Leak on the Technology Services Branch. Our manager of the branch is out on vacation, I believe. Not out ill, but out on vacation.
Busy in management training.
Ah, yes. The required management training. Okay. Welcome back.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me back. You know, I think as you've had an opportunity to look at a lot of the presentations from our programs, I think technology is a really common theme across both achievements for 2018 and also goals for 2019. Technology more and more is becoming a key to success in any organization, not just state government, but any organization. When I look at some of the goals for some of our programs, I start to sweat a little bit because I realize how much work it is for the Technology Services Branch and some of the IT professionals that support all these programs. But it's something we're really excited about. There's more and more demand for these services, and I think there's more and more opportunity to use technology to help create efficiencies and help us serve our population of licensees and motorists better. So that's really exciting to me. I think some of the early actions by the Newsom administration also strengthen that belief that there are some real opportunities to use technology to help government serve folks better in California. So that said, in terms of 2018 accomplishments, one of the big things that was kind of going on behind the scenes, there was a large IT reclassification that was approved by CalHR in late 2017. So for BAR and all the other state departments across the state, that meant new duty statements, new organizational structures. At BAR, we actually chose to reorganize the branch into 3 units instead of 2. So we added a business technology management unit with a real focus on reaching out to our programs and helping us better understand those program needs so we can start engaging them more at a strategic level and developing some of those solutions and alternatives to improve those programs, many of which, again, which you saw as part of their goals for 2019. So a lot of changes from an organizational perspective. The IT reclassification also really modernized the labor categories and the labor descriptions to align with kind of the IT industry today. A lot of these labor categories hadn't been updated since the 60s and the 70s. So terms like data processing manager aren't really applicable in today's IT market. So looking forward, I think that allows us to potentially attract some talent from the private sector. I think it allows the state really to move forward with some of the information technology goals and objectives they have from a higher level as well. Another change was the move to a managed print service. Another big theme across a lot of the improvements we're looking at from an IT perspective, moving to cloud, moving to infrastructure as a service, moving to software as a service. Well, printing as a service is also a thing. It's allowed us to greatly reduce our cost per printing, our cost per page to print. So that's something we've rolled out across all our field offices and HQ for networked printers. Internal application support. A lot of new development went on within the Technology Services Branch. Applications like Artist that support our gas audit unit and allow them to create some efficiencies were produced. We also maintain and support about 15 internal applications, everything from applications that help us manage and support smog check, to enforcement applications, to licensing applications, consumer assistance program, and so forth. Laptop desktop refresh is something that's always going on, something always keeping our staff busy. We constantly are working to provide new equipment, better equipment, more reliable equipment to serve the needs of the program. This year specifically, with 2 of the big upgrades, Windows 10 was a big improvement, and also looking at some rugged laptop solutions to help our field folks be more efficient and kind of tailor some of the equipment to their unique needs of being out in the field. Something else, we initiated the enforcement and licensing modernization business readiness activities, something we reported on. Oh, I'm sorry. Enforcement and licensing modernization business readiness activities. I know we reported on this, I think, in October or maybe the BAG meeting prior, but based on direction from the legislature and DCA, we are working to modernize those platforms, and a lot of activities gone on with that. A lot of work around documenting our as-is business processes, and we've actually got into some of the 2B business process documentation and formalized change management as well. CalVista support. Again, a lot of hours eaten up with CalVista, a lot of testing and development, and also RFP support for the RFP process. In terms of goals moving forward, really all these goals kind of fall under 2 or 3 larger objectives. First, which is to increase our IT service alignment with the needs of our programs. Something I've kind of touched on. Also increase the service delivery, the efficiencies of our service delivery, looking at people, processes, and also technology. And finally, kind of the concept of continuous improvement, something we're really trying to drive across all the programs and make sure we align the delivery of our IT services with something that's measurable, something that's quantifiable. Oh, excuse me. So in terms of 2019 goals, first and foremost is to complete the CalVista project. If I have to give a CalVista project presentation in the year 2020, I'm going to tear out what little hair I have left, I promise you. Secondly, enter the project approval life cycle for ELM. So conveniently for me, right as we're wrapping up CalVista, we're also starting another large reportable project. So I'm really excited about that. Infrastructure refresh and consolidation. We've been working really closely with DCA on a lot of these sorts of issues. Certainly the direction from leadership within IT within the state is to consolidate and standardize whenever possible. So there's 38 boards and bureaus. Why are we doing things 38 different ways? The idea is to work with DCA and help standardize, consolidate some of that software and hardware. So that's ongoing work. Laptop, desktop refresh, as I mentioned. Implement an enterprise EFAC solution is something else we're looking at. And the enforcement folks touched on the e-signature solution, DocuSign, so something that's in process and something we want to continue to expand throughout the organization. Lots of efficiencies, obviously the ability to reduce paper, go green, all that stuff. Another big effort is the public website redesign. New state templates available, so we'll be working, and you'll see a new kind of look and feel to our website this year. And finally, kind of the enhancement of our overall IT security posture, something that's important not just for Bureau of Automotive Repair, but all state entities and any organization. You don't want to be, the folks on the front page of the paper when you leak somebody's data. So security will be a big focus moving forward as well. And that's all we have.
Thank you, Clay. Any questions, comments? All right, that does it for our program reviews. Hopefully people found that helpful or informative, kind of give an update, as I say, of what happened in 2018 and looking forward what some of our goals in each of our program areas are. All right, let's forge ahead. We've got inside of an hour. I don't think this one will take that much longer, but we'll see. It's a smog check program update. We had thought about rolling this into the program reviews that we just finished, but there's so much here that it couldn't be. Garrett couldn't keep it to 2 slides, so we had to pull him out of the program reviews and kind of do a standalone update. It's much more involved, and I thought, yeah, it makes sense. We got a lot of activity in your area. All right, welcome.
All right, thank you. Hello, Bureau Advisory Group. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go over a smog check program update, sort of what we have going on. As Pat said, I couldn't quite narrow it down to 2 slides, but bear with me and we'll have a lot of fun here. All right, let's see, where's the... Okay, first of all, this has been talked about a little bit already today, but the Bar 97 dial-up to IP rollout, when we switching over to the new vid, one of the things we didn't want to take with us was the old network of modem banks, and so that was required that the dial-up systems move into the 21st century, and so that's what we're doing with the Bar 97s. Regulations were adopted in August of this last year, but prior to the regulations being adopted, the equipment manufacturers worked with us in terms of starting that process earlier than that in order to meet our deadlines for time. Internet connection beta software started doing beta testing in October of 2017. The first vendor software was certified in January of last year. To keep the industry up to date throughout this process, we've published questions and answers. We've sent out multiple ET blasts, always trying to keep everyone aware of what we're doing at any point in time. We locked up the analyzers from performing dial-up inspections on November 1st of this last year, so it's been about 2.5 months since that time. We still have the modem banks working for people that have analyzers, and the way the Bar 97 worked, because it was offline, they were able to do inspections, and those inspections, if they were offline, wouldn't get set up to the bin immediately. And so there's always been a little bit of a lag we have to respect, where after the systems stop doing testing, we have to allow those residual inspections to get up to the vid. We've allowed 2.5 months of time at this point, which is plenty. We're actually getting ready to lock those out on Monday from doing any of the dial-up updates at that point, even though they haven't been doing inspections. And we currently have, as this was already mentioned, over 4,000 analyzers using the internet-connected Bar 97. All right, OBD defeat devices. These are devices that are intended to make a vehicle that would otherwise fail an OIS inspection or just the OBD portion of an inspection, make it look like it's passing instead. This was already talked about in the enforcement update. On April 4th, 2018, a ET blast went out. Enforcement went out with Operation Doorstop, visited the stations believed to be using those devices, took aggressive action. They went in ahead and did the statewide audit of those stations, initiated over 400 criminal and administrative cases. Most of those were administrative. They're working with the district attorney to secure search warrants and seize devices. A lot of the time, if a device is really good, we don't even see it in engineering initially. We rely on enforcement to pick them up in their routine audits that are going on. And then BAR continues certificate blocking and referee direction. So this has been one of the most important tools in the arsenal for discouraging the device usage. Clearly, for the most egregious cases, there's nothing that substitutes enforcement going out there and working with these stations directly. But for a lot of the other stations, the certificate blocking inspection before it could issue a certificate, and sending to the referee is very effective. Okay, there's two basic flavors of an OBD defeat device. The first one is a simple simulator, and this is a device that just simply stands alone. You plug it in, it mimics the vehicle. The vehicle does not have to be present for the fraud to occur. This is obviously most popular with the smog check stations engaging in this type of work because you don't have to have the vehicle present, therefore servicing used car lots that are looking for fraudulent inspections, this is a very handy type of device to have. The problem with this type of device is it tends to be easier for us to detect. And so we've been able to, in terms of the simple simulators, really largely stop their use throughout the program through certificate blocking. The other type of device is a pass-through device. And we've also called these bit flippers. And what they effectively do is when we're having OBD communications with the vehicle, they hook up in between the DAD and the vehicle, and they'll take all the information that's coming through and they'll pass it all on to us so everything looks normal during an inspection. But when something is coming that they don't want us to have, they will flip that bit. So for instance, if a DTC comes through on a vehicle, it's going to, all the other information is getting passed through, and then oops, it got a DTC, oops, that DTC is gone, we don't see it at our end anymore. Similar with readiness monitors, if it comes back and it says a readiness monitor hasn't been run, the device will flip that bit, all of a sudden it looks like readiness monitors have been run. Now we expected, when we originally rolled out the OIS testing, and in fact OBD testing even before, we knew that eventually this was a possibility that this might happen, that someone could do this because we're just dealing with data. What surprised us through this process was the speed with which it happened. We thought that there'd be kind of an organized progression at, you know, they put a device out there, we stop them from using that device. Then they develop a new device and then we stop them from using that device. And so in a sense, our enforcement's engaging with them and preventing them from using devices and writing cases against them would be the motivation for evolving their equipment. What actually happened in practice was that they were just off to the races evolving before we even got going in terms of writing cases against these stations. So this device, the pass-through type device, came a lot faster than we expected to see. And as you can expect, because most of the data is coming unadulterated to us, they're very difficult to see. So addressing OBD fraud, 4 basic plans here. Certificate blocking, again, stopping a certificate from being issued during a fraudulent inspection before the end of the inspection. Referee direction, once the certificate block is put on, we send the vehicle to the referee. It cannot go on through the inspection process until the referee has essentially issued a certificate or said that the vehicle, the OBD portion for which the vehicle was directed to the referee is in a passing condition. A lot of administrative cases are filed against these stations, and in some cases, criminal prosecutions. All right, we have specific authority to do certificate blocking. I'll let you read that on your own for the sake of time. Impact of certificate blocking. It's, as I mentioned before, it's very effective. When we block a vehicle, not only does that stop that certificate from being issued, but it actually denies a customer to the station performing that inspection. And obviously, it inconveniences the consumer too. So the consumers who are taking advantage of fraudulent activity by the stations, they're now disincentivized because they were trying to get an easy cert, and now they actually have to go to the referee for a double dose of fun. So of right now, when we look at, since the program started, the second bullet there, over 14,000 vehicles have been directed to the referee since January of 2018. In this last month alone, 1,557 vehicles were directed to the referee since January of 2018. Now, when we direct vehicles to the referee, interestingly, only about half of them ever show up. The rest of them, we assume they get either retired, move out of state, they operate unregistered. In some cases, they've been finding loopholes through the registration process, and so we've actually been working with DMV to close those loopholes as well. Bar OIS update plans. So as I mentioned, these bit flippers, these type of devices are very difficult to detect. In some cases, we have been able to do it. And the way we're able to do it is we have to look for very subtle mistakes that they're making when they do their work. The problem we see in the long term, if they actually get very accurate in what they're doing, we're not going to be able to see it. So what we're moving forward now with is new specifications for a new DAD device that is actually able to detect these type of devices very easily by really analyzing the way, not only the data that's coming through, but the way in which the communications are occurring. As part of this update, we are also including for the first time embedded GPS in the device. Some of the problems we've seen happening are because the DADs are so portable, they're not tied down with a dynamometer. These devices can be easily moved to any location where they want to do inspections, like their living room. And so we could actually see in some cases, based upon IP addresses, where people are consolidating stations from throughout the state into certain singular locations. And so this new device, one of the changes for it is actually to include GPS in the device. Now, for those kind of familiar with GPS and thinking on a shop environment, that might present some problems because you got, a lot of times metallic structures and things like this. It wouldn't be something where we're looking at it every test. It may be something where somebody has to, all right, we suspect something may be going on. We want you to take the vehicle outside, obtain the GPS signal, and then go back to inspecting. So that'd be kind of the nature of what we're looking at with that device. Another change we're looking at adding to the DAD or the OIS is a webcam. And this has potentially a couple benefits to it. One is that enforcement, if they see something going on, they can kind of engage it directly at the time. Open up a chat with the station saying, hey, what's going on? What do you have going on here? We're concerned about what's happening. The other thing is that it potentially allows more interaction with the referee on some areas. For instance, if they have a vehicle that they have a question on and they don't know whether just to stop the inspection and send the vehicle to the referee, they could potentially engage the referee at that point with essentially like a phone a friend. Hey, we got this problem. What's your sense on this? And so that's a way we think we could improve efficiency without having to send as many vehicles to the referee. Another change is a biometric device. Right now, when an inspector wants to start an inspection, they've got to enter their ID, their password in order to get into the analyzer. And so one of the common defenses that enforcement runs into when they're prosecuting stations is, hey, somebody they swiped my password, now they're doing inspections under my name. I can't help, that's not my fault. What this device allows us to do is actually very conclusively establish who's doing which inspection. Finger vein scanner is, we believe finger vein or palm vein are the two ways in which we're looking at doing this. Positively identifies the user, even to the extent that right now, one of the reasons for which we can't go forward with many criminal prosecutions is that we cannot conclusively say who did the inspection. Unless you have a camera on the inspector when they're doing the work, they could say, hey, it wasn't me that did it, and criminal, as Pat was talking about earlier, has a higher burden of proof. So what this does is it says, no, we know that you did this work. Now a lot of the stuff that's been going otherwise can actually go criminal. And the last thing is we are able to now, with this potentially, we'll be able to, when an inspector gets in their licensing examination, we'll be able to tie that with all of the same identification as the inspections. And so a lot of this stuff, in terms of fraud that may be occurring on that front, we'll be able to trap that at that point and stop it from happening. All right, we're also looking at updates to the BAR 97. Right now, the updates that are currently going into place, the BAR testing software updates will make analyzers fully compliant with the 2017 specification. So part of that was kind of divided into two pieces. Part of that was meeting the dial-up to IP requirements, and now we're working on the other half of that update, which is getting the LEPFET testers, that's one of the primary changes, getting those integrated into the data stream. Up to this point, LEPFET testing, it was kind of implemented in a less than ideal way when it first happened, in that we had a tester that went into place. That data wouldn't get sent up through the normal BAR 97 data stream. In fact, it would get sent to a separate data depot. And then at that point, they would do a manual entry, the inspector would, to indicate whether the LEPFET test passed or failed during a BAR 97 inspection. Well, this naturally, when you have an industry that sometimes can have problems with fraud, this was sort of ripe for fraud. And so what this new update does is it actually ties it into the BAR 97. That data is encapsulated. We have data custody from the test when it occurs until when it goes up to the VID, which is what we need for prosecution based upon data. So we have a lot of improvements just with this integration. We will have a cutover to those devices pretty soon, and we will inform the industry via ET Blast when that happens. We also have future BAR 97 update plans beyond that. The two primary areas is we would like to get certificate blocking similar to what is on the OAS. Right now, the only certificate blocking we can do is on the OAS, and it's been easy to implement that because all the inspection occurs on the web. It's all a web-based software. BAR 97 software is all resident on the analyzers, and so when the decision is made to certify and pass a vehicle, all that decision making has already been done. Then they just communicate it via a transaction with the VID at that point. What this change will actually allow us to do is it'll make that communication, the VID will say yes or no based upon the information we have, whether or not this was a valid test, and we could block their certificate at that point. Another change we'd like to also implement on the BAR 97s is the biometric device. Again, same benefits as what the other had on the OAS. By the way, as a side note, with regard to the biometric device, we've tested this out on our roadside units, and based upon our feedback from them, it's actually much easier for the technicians. Essentially, it's very fast. You walk up, finger on it, hand on it, boom, it's done. And so we've actually, people have been very satisfied with that. Last slide here, permanent diagnostic trouble codes. This has already been presented to BAG on the April 19th, 2018 meeting. We're planning to incorporate it this summer, probably in July timeframe. And right now we've been doing a lot of work with the ARB to identify vehicles that may have problems with diagnostic trouble codes. For instance, they aren't clearing them. And so once this goes into effect, we plan to have either the vehicles where we had issues fixed, or we'll have workarounds in place so the consumers are not inconvenienced by this. And we will have ET blasts coming forth to inform the industry the exact dates when this will happen. And that's it for my presentation.
Thank you, Garrett. Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, Jack Molodonov. Thank you for the presentation. With regard to all the defeat devices and what you're planning on doing with the fingerprinting and GPS, you're going to need to do a new DAD specification, so that would take a regulation, correct? Okay, so when you go through that process, and you're starting to look at that, obviously, when do you plan on doing the regulation, or is it this year?
We've already got the regulations, drafted internally. We're working with the manufacturers right now. We're actually having conversations with them to make sure everything we're proposing is within the, a reasonable framework. But we're trying to get this going as quickly as we can. That said, the regulatory process is slow.
Have there been any discussions about the costs involved here? Because I'm sure this technology and all these mechanisms to detect fraud it's going to increase the cost of the DAD equipment. I would have to assume.
Yes,
making an assumption.
it will, and we have been keeping an eye on that because we don't want to. We don't want to get a bunch of pushback, just based upon cost alone, because this is a very important thing. And I can't obviously quote any prices right now, but from what we've been looking at this point, it seems very reasonable to us. So.
When you say reasonable, there are numbers.
Yeah,
what's reasonable to you may not be reasonable to someone else.
We don't. So we're talking about, like, for a DAD right now is 1,500 devices and $1,500 for a DAD, which compared to like a Bar 97 system, we're talking $40,000 with the dynamometer and everything.
Right.
And we are not even, from what we've been looking at so far right now, we're not even close to double the cost. So we're trying to stay well short of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that include the 1,500 currently for the data acquisition device? That includes the printer.
The 1,500 right now on the general pricing is just the DAD itself.
The DAD itself.
And then you have the printer, the laptop, the barcode scanner, and that type of stuff.
Those other peripheral items that are required as well. Yes, Mr. Gallo.
Yes, John Gallo, California Automotive Business Coalition. It's actually kind of interesting that you're already talking to the manufacturers on the DAD units to try and figure out a way to basically beat the beat devices.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really makes sense to have something into the software to not only identify when something foreign's been added to the device and to block it from operating. We've talked a lot about the different platforms between Bar 97 and the new units and making sure that people are identified that you're hooking your vehicle up to the wrong year. And if we're going through this process again, I know we've already had a change and we had talked to the chief about having a warning screen come up, you're hooked to the wrong year, or the wrong platform anyway. And maybe there's some way in this new process, if we're going to do that, to just flat out lock them out if they're in the wrong platform for the wrong year.
With the new OIS
Yeah.
software? I mean, I can't state what is actually, what's ultimately going to happen, but one of our thoughts, part of the reason, like, there's obviously a lot of concern about why don't we block everything? Why don't we, if we can see all this stuff, why don't you just block everything that's wrong and then we can move on from there? And the problem has been that we can't see everything right now, and we aren't 100% on everything right now, and so we're limited in what we can do. Once with this new hardware, we think we could potentially head in that direction for a conversation. We think that maybe we will be good enough that we can do that, but we don't know that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
I thought on the bar OBD inspection system, it does block a vehicle that should be Bar 97 tested. It's just the other direction.
Well,
so
even
the update you're talking about will be on the OIS system, but not the Bar 97 system, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. The Bar 97, we have added, with this new update, one of the things that was added was a screen that tells them if you're hooked up to the, just very basic stuff,
Right.
hey, you have a 1999, gasoline vehicle. Are you sure you want to be hooked up? It's a very simple thing. So you can have, to those type of rules, there are exceptions. So you can have a federal vehicle that's over 2,000 that should be tested on a Bar 97, and we can't make those discerning calls, but there is a basic screen that went into this latest software update
And
to
that
help
comes
with that.
in March with the Bar 97 update? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Questions? Others?
I'm just, I got
Oh, yeah, Mr. Parra.
Ruben Parra with California Automotive Futures. Just out of curiosity, who do you find is doing this with the defeat devices? It takes some kind of investment. Is it the racers, the speed shops, or is it just the local shops that can't fix the vehicles correctly or might need more training?
Yes, to all of that. I mean, it's what we see everything from, you have certain vehicles, your Subaru WRXs, Mustangs, Camaros, and stuff like this that are doing a lot of performance stuff. They obviously need help with that. We see used car lots where the vehicles aren't even necessarily broken, but they just want the convenience of not taking their vehicle to a smog station. We see a lot of consumers where their vehicles are broken and they can't afford to fix it. We see in many cases vehicles that are broken and it's not worth fixing the vehicle. And so that's why I think, we see a lot of the vehicles that don't ever show up to a referee inspection, it was one of the interesting stories I heard the enforcement guys say a while back was they were actually on site doing some of their lot inspections, and they found a vehicle that it had some problems with it. They were trying to clear the codes while the bar guys were on site in order to make a sale. And so then they of course stopped that from happening, and the lot person said effectively, that's okay, we're just gonna crush this vehicle now anyway. It's not even worth trading it to another. It's just the vehicle's broken. And that's true. A lot of these vehicles that are having, you know, illegal work done on them, they're end of life. They're done. They're trying to slough it up on some unsuspecting motorist, and so those are the types of vehicles that they're trying to get them through.
Other questions, comments? Anything from the webcast? No. Audience? Other? Okay. Oh, we do. I have a question. Come forward, please. Welcome. And introduce yourself.
Michael Spellman from Paul's Automotive in Sacramento, California. The new DAD device that you're plan on making that we have to have, obviously.
We're speaking of trouble hearing.
The new device that you're going to make us have,
Yeah.
we're going to get a credit back on the one we already have.
No, I mean,
This equipment is just getting ridiculously expensive. I mean, I just bought a new worldwide machine, talking up to $27,000, and probably using that thing once every 2 weeks. Okay, I have to have it to be STAR certified. Cap repair program, we did 2 of them last year. You know, I see these notes that were saying there's, you know, over 4,000 shops, there's only 3,600 repairs done. So you're making all this equipment, this new equipment, to catch people that are illegal, but the guys that are doing it legal are paying a lot of money for all this new equipment that we're already doing it right.
Right, except, all right, so 2 things. One is that updating equipment is a cost of doing business. In fact, that was foreseen in the law when they wrote it, that we would have to do updates at some point. But part of what I think you may be missing, and this is for all the legitimate shops out there, these guys are eating your lunch. These guys are taking a lot of volume from you. They're taking repairs that you could be doing from you, and this is the way in which they're doing it. And so this new equipment, what it actually does, it levels the playing field back in favor of the guys that are doing legitimate work. It's obviously not going to catch you if you're doing legitimate inspections, but it is going to stop the guys who are eating your lunch from continuing to do so. And so I think what we're proposing to do, I really believe, is in the best interest of the industry, and it's in the best interest of all the legitimate operators that are trying to make a living out there. So,
okay.
There's also some things that you touched upon, Mike, is it?
Yes.
Mike, related to the repair assistance program and looking at kind of weeding out those who aren't really in the game to be repairing cars and kind of forcing them into a program they really have no interest in, which is the repair assistance program. And so you might see an increase based on some of those changes that we're proposing. An increase in volume on the repair assistance program side of things. Stick around if you can for the afternoon workshop on that.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming forward and thank you for being here. Other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you, Garrett. Just got a couple more items. Our enforcement statistics update is a handout only. It's our quarterly review of enforcement statistics. Are there any questions relative to it? Has anyone had a chance to look through it? It's pretty standard review of all of the complaint trends over the last, well, comparing the year-to-date, fiscal year-to-date from July to end of the calendar year, so the last 6 months, and comparing that with the prior fiscal year for the same time frame, the first 6 months. Any questions or comments? Okay. We are at 12:11. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. Good. Public comment on items not on the agenda. Anyone? Mr. Gallo, I looked right first.
It's all right. Just real quick, just a suggestion. I really appreciate each of the departments giving an overview of what's going on within their department. And they went through a lot of different numbers that weren't in the slides. And if they could include that in what Zach puts on the web, on the different reports, it would be nice to have some of those other numbers. Specifically when we were looking at some of the ARD numbers and we were looking at some of the training issues, just things like that. Not a major thing. And then it was interesting going back to Mr. Paro's comment about, and I think also George's comment about, we look at the number of smog technicians coming into the system being tested, and then the number that are actually passing. And I would suspect, and it's just a statement, that with the implementation of AB 2138 and the revision on criminal records and things like that, that may change that number too.
Thank you. Yeah, I did notice that with the licensing update, your numbers, I was having a tough time following, so we'll have to look at that. I don't know. The draft we had, I'm not sure why it was, maybe you were combining, adding them together. Yeah. Oh, sorry, got some feedback there. Yes, Mr. Rice.
Bud Rice, Quality Tune-Up Shops. If I could just rehatch a little bit of yesterday again, Pat, for the benefit of the people in the room.
Absolutely.
One of the conversations we had was about menu pricing. And one of the discussions we had, you were having it again today, was a lot of the work that went into having a bigger tent that allowed the oil change associations to come in and be part of the ARD family. In many cases, those guys kind of live and die on this menu pricing philosophy where somebody would say, come in, get a, if there's existing lube fittings, oil change, oil up to 5 quarts of oil, a new oil filter, $40. And it's a bundle of those things. In yesterday's conversation, you kind of made it sound as though that made sense so long as the customer and you had a meeting of the mind and they go, okay, I'm going to get all that for that. I'm happy with that. But I'm telling you, that's not how it is on the street. On the street, your guys want to see line items. And they want to see 4.5 quarts of oil. They want to see a line item for labor. They want to see a line item for any other thing that's in there. And they want you to live or die off of those line items, which means the number has to be changing, or what makes up the line items numbers have to be changing to meet the $40 bundled price. So I guess I'm asking, is it possible to have some kind of a regulation where, provided we can come up with, whoever the we is, come up with the components of what a bundle includes, and here's the line item of what those things are, for this price, it would be sufficient for BAR to say, yeah, that's cool, go ahead and make sure it's listed, make sure everything you're going to do is listed, make sure the price is there. If you have a meeting with the customer and they say, yeah, I want all that for $40, cool, we got it. If we could come up with something like that, I think you'd make a lot of people happy. We were talking about this after the meeting last night, after you guys all left, because we still weren't happy with where we ended up, and we're still confused as to what we're supposed to do. So I think if we just had the ability to have a bundled service that included these items for this price, you'd kill it. So thank you.
Thank you for doing that. Kind of recapping the discussion we had yesterday with the board members of the California Automotive Business Coalition. Yeah, I'm open to that. What I was referring to was the estimate itself, though. The estimate, and not necessarily, there's not an itemization that occurs at the estimate stage. So you get the oil change for whatever price is listed out there on the, what'd you call it, the menu pricing, the menu board that's listed at the preventative maintenance provider's shop. In this case, let's call it an oil change, because that's one of the particular preventative maintenance service that we're talking about. Yeah, as long as you point to that and an estimate and what that entails is, I guess, what you're getting at. And you look at in the invoice that parts and labor and all of the things that go into that pricing, where we ask that it be itemized on the invoice. I think you were asking for, it sounds like you're asking for some kind of a bundling of that for this particular preventative maintenance service? Okay. And a regulation that could address that. Yeah, I think we should take a look at that. I know there was a lot of confusion about that yesterday. I'm open to it. I don't have anything off the top of my head that comes to mind, but we can look at something like that. Working with you. Okay. Were there any other preventative maintenance services that fall into that? I don't know. Just oil change seemed to come to mind. You know, that itemization of how many quarts of oil did you use? How much was the labor? Yeah. We have a question from the webcast? Which phone? I guess we have someone from the webcast. This, I think, came for future meetings. Was this the email you sent? No, something else? I'm having trouble getting connection here in this room. Hold on just a second. Did you text it to me, or? Yeah, that's part of the problem. Let's see. Hold on a sec. Let's see if I got it. Yeah, I'm frozen up here. You have a mic there? I can't hear you. Say that last part. What? The short answer is no. The question, it sounds like from the webcast, is any feedback on enforcement as it relates to AB 2392? That was the storage fee bill? Right. Yeah. Nothing with respect to the Bureau's enforcement of that. The bill took effect January 1 of this year. Obviously, we've been enforcing, as it relates to storage fees issues coming up with in the context of an automotive repair dealer, registered automotive repair dealer under the Bureau of Automotive Repair. We've been dealing with that for years in advance, well in advance of this bill, but nothing new has changed, and no new enforcement initiatives or cases, if you will, in just 2 weeks with these new provisions in place. I think we're still trying to get our hands wrapped around the changes, but those will come about potentially, and usually that happens by way of consumer complaints. So we'll continue to monitor consumer complaints and look at any violations of this new law as it relates to storage fees and the charges. There's presumptive fees that are presumptively reasonable, and then rebuttable presumptions as it relates to unreasonable fees. And we'll continue to look at that as we monitor and respond to consumer complaints and investigate those matters. Yeah, 2 weeks, not enough time to gather much on it. Anything else? Thank you for reading that. I don't know why it hasn't come through. All right. Any other public comment on items not on the agenda? That last thought. We were looking at an update of our last presentation on this legislation and the storage fee presentation that Matthew Gibson gave I think it was in October, at the last meeting. We just thought it was too soon. The bill hasn't really even had a chance to take effect. I mean, just 2 weeks into the new year. We'll look at maybe inviting Mr. Gibson, Matthew Gibson, back either at the April or July meetings, I'm thinking. Okay, I think that's it for public comment on items not on the agenda. Before we adjourn, one last item is our next Bar Advisory Group meeting is scheduled, is it for this room? Yes, also for this room, Thursday, April 18th, 2019. That'll be our second calendar quarter meeting of the year. And there was a suggestion, see if I can pull it up here, through the webcast. Joanna Johnson with the AOCA, the Automotive Oil Change Association, had asked, would BAR consider having CDFA, that's the California Department of Food and Agriculture's Division of Measurement Standards, back to a meeting, a BAR Advisory Group meeting, to update the group on the agency's plans for amending state transmission, product labeling, and receipt requirements. I think that someone else asked that at the last meeting. So you did reach out to Mr. Morrison, did you not? Alan Morrison? So we have made an attempt. We were looking at maybe getting him to this meeting today, and I just don't think it was possible. So we'll look to see if we can bring him back for the April meeting. Does anybody know, did those regulations take effect? Are they adopted and in place?
It's my understanding it is, and there's a lot of confusion still over this whole issue with transmission fluid additives on universal fluid with an additive for a specific manufacturer.
We'll follow up with him tomorrow or next week about bringing him to the April meeting, if he can hold on for another few months. We tried our best to get him here, and I'm sure he had other things, busy with the new year. Anything else as it relates to agenda ideas? Come up with a couple of things. Storage, this CDFA presentation on the new regulations. Anything else? We'll survey everyone in the weeks following today's meeting to see about next meeting agenda items. Okay. With that, we will adjourn. I want to thank everyone for their attendance and their participation, and I hope many of you will stick around for our repair assistance workshop that'll begin in this same room at 2 p.m. Thank you all. Have a good rest of the day.